One topic that is really big right now is this obsession with metrics
Hmm.
as the focus of these programs rather than learning and doing something actually with it.
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Welcome back, CX Passport listeners. Today we head over to Germany to talk with Frances Chapireau. Frances has been working in customer experience for about 15 years now, but she didn't start there. She came from a market research background. Back when being close to customers wasn't debated, it just was expected. Over the last few years, she spent a lot of time helping organizations make better use of voice of the customer. And just as importantly, well, actually doing something with the insight they collect. She's also trained in Lego series play, which shows up in how she thinks about teamwork, collaboration, and why closing the loop in companies is often harder than listening in the first place. She brings a very practical, grounded point of view to a space that often swings between hype and hand-wringing. And she's not afraid to challenge some comfortable assumptions along the way. Frances, welcome to CX Passport.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Frances, I know you came from that customer experience market research background. When you look at how companies are listening to customers today, what feels like real progress? And what feels, well, like we just somehow made it harder than it used to be?
Yeah, so this is a really good question. And I think the one thing that jumps or springs straight to mind is the fact that we're able to listen to customers kind of in an ongoing way, much more sort of quickly. When I think back to market research, sort of customer satisfaction tracking, like that's where I started. And the turnaround times were quite long, right? You would do your sampling and then you would go into field. Then you've got a whole lot of work to do on the back of it, like with the data tables, and then manually putting that into PowerPoint presentations. And so just like the speed of what we can do now, right, in terms of real-time listening, and getting that all done in sort of automated, pushed into dashboards. We've been doing that for probably the last 10 years or so or more already now, but like just that leap, from traditional market research to customer experience management platforms that just automated all of that. I think that's just been huge in terms of the speed of the turnaround.
Yeah.
The fact that we are able to respond then to customers much more quickly. We'll maybe come talk more about close the loop later, but just the ability, if you've had a transaction, you put down the phone, you get that survey shortly afterwards, you maybe leave a not very good score or comment, you might then get a call back within a really short time frame. And that didn't used to be possible. It just wasn't
Right.
when I sort of started my career, that wasn't how we were managing things. So I think that's been amazing. And then on the dashboard side, yeah, and I know a lot of people sort of hate dashboards. So there's too many of them and they're not helping, but at least you're getting that, it's all held in one platform normally, or that platform's pulling in the data, automating all that. So there is less human error, there's less manual work. And again, it helps us democratize the data.
Right.
You can push that out to different departments. You can easily apply a filter. So you're much more able to quickly respond to questions. But what customers saying about this? Oh, let me go in and check. It's not a request put in and we've got to go and do more analysis. So I think all of that has been really positive development.
Right.
And in recent years, you've also had this push towards multi-source. So not just survey, but, let's pull in
Right.
reviews, social media stuff, and particularly over the last sort of 5 to 7 years, maybe also that going into the contact center, getting the data from there. And
Thank goodness.
yeah, there's so
We used
much.
to blow that off, and now we're like, oh, wait, there's a lot of
Yeah,
stuff
right.
going on here. Yeah.
There's so much going on there. Now with text analytics has come, it's come so much further.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more accessible than it ever was. So I think all of that is really good.
I
But
feel like there's a but coming here. Oh, that's really
yeah,
good. But
yeah, there is a but. And I think that is that because it's moved, out of the market research space, or a lot of the time, into these sort of platforms, sort of its own space, customer experience management, these often it's self-serve platforms. I think in a way we've lost a bit that instinct to go and deep dive where we see the data's not giving us all the answers, which of course it doesn't. But where previously you might have had a research team sitting on that with you and saying, we could just go and do some interviews. Like let's just follow up on that. Let's just go and dig into that a bit more. Why don't we recontact some of the customers that left us comments about that? You know, there was a way of quite quickly doing that if the customer wanted to. And I think you've always had like that whole market research toolkit at your disposal. But now, like, not all of the platforms kind of really offer that, or, you know, that's not their main thing. And certainly when we're talking about maybe, you know, going out and talking to customers live or doing like going and observing them, doing a sort of more ethnographic approach, like they don't offer that, right? So, and so I think we've got pulled in this direction of quant data predominantly. And even where we're dealing with more qualitative sources, like the contact center, right? That's all text, that's all voice, but these platforms are still designed to kind of quantify that and show it to you as a graph or whatever. It's not going out and doing that deep, you know, having those deep conversations with customers and digging into the why and stuff. So I think that's the but. I think is that we've gone too far, maybe in one direction.
You saw me, well, you probably even heard me go, when you were saying that, because I would think that with all the tools and all the capability that we have now, that we would actually find research to be easier. And then you mentioned, but we've lost that instinct to go deeper. Why do you think that is? If we've got all of this rich information that's available, why aren't we going out and talking to customers? Why aren't we digging deeper? How did we end up here?
Yes, it's a good question. I think in part it's because like we made doing things like online surveys like really cheap and really easy and really fast. You know, a lot of CX teams, a lot of voice of customer teams are quite small and they're trying to manage these big survey programs. And you think about the whole sort of range of what people are trying to do, and then it feels like another thing that could be quite time consuming. I think, you know, maybe increasingly we're going to find we have got the tools to help us do that at scale, and certainly in terms of, you know, analyzing interview transcripts, that's all going to get again cheaper and easier. So like hopefully we're going to move back in that direction. But I just think there's been this period, maybe 10 years or so, where, you know, the customer experience management approach kind of got established, and then we moved into this era of kind of voice of the customer, these large scale, real time, like high volume surveys. And I just think we got so occupied with those. You've often got sort of CX and UX and market research all sitting in different places actually in the organization, and not really working together that much. And so sometimes some of those things would be seen as like, well, that's a market research activity, not a CX activity. I think bringing all that together is important. I mean, it's interesting when you talk to UX teams, like product teams, when you talk to them about voice of the customer, for them, it absolutely is that user research. It is interviews, it's user testing. But the CX space, it feels a bit crazy to talk about those as separate things.
Hey there, CX Passport travelers. I want to let you know about CX Passport Live. CX Passport Live helps brands amplify their event's impact with the power of live, in-person podcasting. Brands partner with CX Passport Live at their on-site event to help excite attendees, reward high-value customers, and convert potential customers. Bring a new level of energy and excitement to your event and amplify your brand's impact with CX Passport Live. Learn more at cxpassportlive.com. Now, back to the show. Well, yeah, and like voice of the customer in general. Right. That is a, I'm going to just use this. Maybe I'm channeling a little bit of marketing here, but that is a brand that has been somewhat tarnished because it got associated with surveys. You even talked about, look, the voice of the customer, big survey programs, and mentioned how, hey, that's a lot of work that's consuming time. Maybe the actual value wasn't there, and possibly the perception of value wasn't there. How can companies get back to real value around voice of the customer, and how can the perception of that value be improved?
One topic that is really big right now, has been discussed a lot right now, is this obsession with metrics and measurement as the sort of focus of these programs, rather than learning and doing something actually with it. And I think so that's one thing I think we can definitely do, is try and shift that focus. You know, the measurement is still there, that's not going to go away, and there's a demand for that. But maybe we don't make it so central and focus so much on the score, and instead try and push the conversation onto, you know, what have we learned? You know, what have we learned from the feedback this month? And really looking at kind of the score as a conversation starter. It's like, okay, that's nice, but what does that score actually mean? What have we been doing in the business to have changed that? And is that showing up in any of the comments, for example, or you know, we fixed that thing, so comments about that should have gone away entirely. Have they? You know, and just really sort of focus more on like, what are we learning from the feedback, rather than like, have we moved that number? And I think that way, you know, that's one way at least, that you start to sort of, you shift the conversation, you reframe it as something else. Another thing I think is that we need to just get a bit more creative in sort of, breaking out of that survey box, finding other sort of ways to bring the customer to life and sort of show that, voice of customer isn't just this one thing. You know, it's actually all these other things. We can have sort of communities, we can have live customer events, we can, you know, actually go, you know, if you've got a business with sort of physical locations, you know, shops, whatever it is, go there, watch what customers are doing, talk to them.
Yeah, actually, what examples do you have of that? Because I imagine from your market research background and then also working with clients today, where have you seen some of that turnaround where, hey, you know, actually we're going to go have a little chat here and see the impact around that little chat?
Yeah, well, you know what? I had a really interesting conversation last week with a woman called Claire Bristow, and she runs the Connecting with Customers program at Aegon, which is like an insurance and pensions provider in the UK. And, you know, they very much, I think, have a sort of nice sort of model program in terms of, you know, how do you go beyond the surveys. Then her part of the team, they really focus on these live panels and making sure that they organize things like live call listening, on like, not as a one-off, like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to do, but they offer it sort of every week. You can sign up. And they just run a whole host of events where they bring customers in and people can, you know, can ask them questions. They make sort of video things, they're sort of doing podcasts, but they're doing a whole range of activity. And I just think it's such a nice example, because, you know, it's not that they've not ditched the survey part, but it's all part of a much bigger picture, and you've got sort of, you know, measurements there, but that focus on, you know, other parts of voice of customer that also helps really drive that the culture. That's
and points out that voice of the customer, or survey, does not equal voice of the customer. It's just one piece of it. And as we continue to grow and find ways to listen to the customer outside of the survey, all the better. But we're gonna bring all that in together, and not. I like what you said. They're not as sort of this just one off, but rather part of the ongoing rhythm. Yeah, that reminds me of your background in team performance. I know you mentioned doing a lot of that kind of work, Lego serious play, closing the loop. All of those things sort of weave together. Heck, even when we were talking about, you've got UX teams and marketing teams and CX teams, all of that is in that realm of team performance and closing loop and all working together. Why is it so hard for companies to move from insight to action? What do you see right now getting in the way of teams actually doing something with what they know? We talked about all this great input, but it doesn't matter if they don't actually do something with it. What's standing in the way of that?
There are a lot of reasons, you know, and I think we just forget how hard it can be, like the reality of bringing people together from different teams, like first of all getting the right people in the room, who are in a position to make that change, and then getting them to work together. A lot of programs that I've come across don't really have the sort of the governance structure in place that makes it clear, you know, who can take action or who should be doing it, how, who's accountable, where's the budget coming from, how do we measure if this is a success, or how do we prioritize? We've actually got this range of things we could be doing, and then people often get stuck in that place of saying, well, which should we do first, and what's the return on that? That you've got to have a way of prioritizing. Whatever you base that on, the number of customers it will affect, the value of those customers. But you have to have sort of systems and processes in place to allow people to take action. And then where it requires this kind of cross-functional collaboration, I think we need to focus on that a lot more deliberately in sort of how we shape it, because I think silos is a huge problem. It's a topic that comes up all the time. Silos are kind of natural in business. We organize ourselves into groups of people with expertise to tackle specific problems. But when we do have something where we need to bring people in, from marketing and IT and product and I don't know what, that's where we can run into difficulties, because they've got their own work going on and they've got their own priorities, and there's probably some politics in there somewhere. People have different ways of working and they have different languages, jargon within their own sort of subspecialty, their way of talking about things, and sort of just expectations about how things will be done. And so I think if you throw a bunch of people into a room and say, hey, we need to solve this problem, it's not just going to happen, right? Collaboration is hard, even within a team that you've maybe been consciously trying to sort of build. So let alone a team that, is sort of thrown together into a working group and are trying to squeeze it in between other bits of their job. So I think, where we put a lot of effort into building our sort of regular static teams, I think we need to put similar effort if we form a working group or some sort of steering committee or some sort of little squad to go and fix something. But we also just put a bit more effort into shaping that team and making sure the alignment's there, building a shared language for talking about the problem and making sure that everyone's actually understood the same problem. On a sort of high level, as an example, you can even take that concept of, what it means to be customer centric or customer first. And if you go out and ask different people in different departments, well, what does that mean? What does that look like in our business? You'll get quite different answers. So
you will.
Yeah. So you have to invest that time, I think, at the beginning. I think that's really, really, that's really important. I think another thing that sort of feeds into it, going back to the insight side and, insights to action, I think we've often on the insight side tried to come with kind of ready packaged, kind of perfect insights. That was always the, even, back when I started market research, that was the expectation. You come with your recommendations, here's all the analysis and here's the results and here are the 3 things, you should do. And I think I like to challenge that a bit. I'm not saying we shouldn't try and do that, but again, I see that as that should be the start of a conversation with the stakeholders who actually have the power to go and do the thing, because they have so much more context. Like the CX team or insights team, they are never going to know all the ins and outs of everything that's going on in every department and what could be causing this and what might be a blocker to that. So I think you have to, by all means, try and come with an opinion, because that's important too. But as a starting to point to, maybe you start your workshop around it maybe and sort of say, okay, well, what are we missing? Get that context and get the stakeholders themselves to try and shape what they think the way forward is. So you present the what and the so what. And then when it comes to the now what, it's like, oh, we want to hear from you too. When people are involved in coming up with the solution themselves and contributing their ideas, they're more invested in then seeing that through and getting that implemented.
Frances, I love that idea of, hey, get folks involved. If I'm just an audience member, it's a lot different than when I'm actually in there participating. 100% agree. Now, folks may have heard me say at the beginning of this introduction that we're talking to you in Germany. Then I think folks can also discern that accent may not be atypical German accent. So travel is something that you definitely do and have done. And it can be
Yeah.
nice to take a little break when there's travel in the first class lounge when it is available. And it is available now for us. So I want to invite you here into the first class lounge. We'll move quickly and have a little bit of fun here. What is a dream travel location from your past?
Yeah. So that would have to be Cambodia, where I went, well, more than 10 years ago now. But it's a beautiful country, interesting. Yeah, went and did the typical things you do, the temples, and
Mm-hmm.
it was just like nowhere else I'd ever been. So yeah, definitely Cambodia.
What a great place. I've spent, I think, 36 hours there. It was on a business trip. And so I would love to
Mhm.
spend more time having not done any of the tourist things. Although that is where, I don't necessarily want to sneak ahead to some of our food section, but that's the place that I had my fried tarantula was there in Cambodia. So
You
we'll
know
talk
what?
about food. We'll talk about food a little bit later. What is a
Yeah,
dream travel location you've not been to yet?
not been to. Well, this is hard to pin down. And actually, the list of places we'd like to go as a family, I think, keeps getting longer and longer.
Uh-huh.
But I think Japan, I think, has always made me curious. And which might be odd for like listeners in North America, but Canada. I've never actually been to Canada, and it looks beautiful. And I've always been kind of that's been on my list for a long time as well. So
Oh,
yeah,
I
when you live in
love
Europe,
that.
it's exotic.
I think it's so important for those, like all of us, when we live somewhere, it becomes kind of normalized. And while I've not been to Canada, but a couple of times, it's still, you're right. I'm like, it's in the backyard. It's something close. It's not exotic. It's not a bucket list trip. And yet for
Yeah,
someone with a different global perspective, has a different perspective on that. There are places probably that you live, heck, maybe where you are right now, that is somebody's bucket trip. And you're like, yeah, that's just where I get my groceries. So it
yeah.
is, I love that global perspective and how we view things through different lenses. Francis, I mentioned food earlier. Let's talk about that a little bit. What is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Right. Well, this I struggle with because I am a bit of a foodie. I like lots of things. I asked my son this morning. I said, "What do I like to eat?" I thought I couldn't, and he said lasagna. But it's my own homemade
Yes,
lasagna. It's weird because it's true. I love it, but I hate eating lasagna in a restaurant.
me
It's
too.
always disappointing.
Yeah.
But the one I
Yeah,
make at home, I quite like.
that's so funny to like you and I are very similar in that regard, in that our homemade recipe I love. I hate restaurant lasagna. It all comes down to whether it's cottage cheese or ricotta cheese for me. And so that's one of the big differences for mine. Well, sounds like the home stuff is something that you really like there. What about while you were growing up? What was something you were forced to eat but you hated as a kid?
Well, like many people, I think, Brussels sprouts. Although I
All
have to
right.
say, I never got my all credit to my parents. They never forced me to eat them.
Good. Okay.
Very rarely, normally at Christmas, they would appear on the table, and I never liked them. And every so often, I'd be encouraged to try one, and they remained
Uh,
disgusting.
well,
I really don't like sprouts.
Francis, you and I are very, very similar. Then we love lasagna and we hate Brussels sprouts. All right. I look forward to when we can meet each other in person and share
Yeah.
a meal together because I know we will like the same things.
Mhm.
Sadly, it is time for us to leave the first class lounge. What is one travel item, not including your phone and not including your passport, that you will not leave home without?
Um, Again, tricky. I would say there's two things I actually always take. Well, no, one thing I always take, so it should be that really, is painkillers. Because there's
Okay.
nothing worse when you are traveling and you're on a long flight or whatever and you're feeling groggy, or even a short flight, you start feeling groggy and you've not got anything with you, and the first thing you have to do is find a pharmacy. So like that, just on a pragmatic level. On an emotional level, I often take a few British, like English breakfast tea bags with me places because that's just a thing from home. And even living here in Germany, we drink in like breakfast tea. And yeah, so if I'm going somewhere where I think they might not have tea, I take it with me.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love the fact that it's something Well, I love the fact that you can bring a little dash of home in something so compact and so easily travelable. I don't think
Yeah,
that I could bring my barbecue or my Tex-Mex or my queso quite as easily as a bag of English
no,
tea. So
bags.
I love that. I love that one item. That's a lot of fun. Francis, getting back into the world of customer experience, but really in a more broader sense. When
Mhm.
clients are coming to you today, where are you seeing their real need? Not just customer experience, but in that broader business context.
So this is, yeah, again, it's a good question, isn't it? It's hard. I honestly find it hard to separate business from customer experience because I just think it's not that separate add-on, is it? Like if you're
It
doing it
shouldn't
well,
be, right?
it shouldn't be. So, I mean, I am seeing that need to reconnect with the customer,
Mhm.
that need to understand them. So it's like even though, if you're running a big program or the ones we were talking about earlier, that kind of understanding of, but who are our customers? Like, can I
Mhm.
picture someone, can I actually picture them before me? Do I really understand if they're going to like this decision or not that we're making? So I think that sort of deeper connection, I think, is there. I think, again, that topic of silos and that sort of work in the business that's not joined up, I'm seeing that causing a lot of frustration and friction. And I think people are aware of it. I think people are very aware of it. But it's like, well, how do we go about changing it? Especially if I'm in a large organization and I'm however many levels down from the sort of the executive team, how do I, you go about sort of navigating that?
Right.
Um,
Right.
I think that's a big challenge. And I think, well, there's a few things I think need to simplify. That's linked to that, isn't it? Of course, like got all this
Right.
different work going on in all different departments. And I think people are sort of battling with complexity, I think. And there's that really nice example. It was an experiment someone ran, and they give people like I think it's like a bridge or something made out of Lego, and it's not stable. And they asked people, fix this bridge.
Mhm.
And people almost intuitively add a brick underneath so it's stable. But an absolutely valid solution would also be to take a brick away from the other side and it would also be stable. But people's
Huh.
natural, yeah, it's a cool experiment. I can't remember who did it. And it just illustrates our human instinct, I suppose, to add things. Like when we find a problem, we add something to fix it. But actually, then you get to the situation where you've got really sort of complex processes and extra steps added into things instead of thinking, well, what can we take away? How can we simplify this? How can we subtract
Wow.
and make them simpler? So I think
You just broke my
these,
brain. I'm sitting here like you just completely broke my brain. I was like, oh, that's brilliant because I see it. There's the bridge. I'm absolutely putting. In fact, I'm putting a lot of bricks under that bridge. I'm adding, and that idea of moving to simplicity, really being and I think about it in our own lives. Heck, it happens. A lot of folks in January, they're like, what can I strip out? Right as we look to new paths and new things forward. Oh gosh, that gave me a lot of optimism and a lot of energy there. And I think that's something that is kind of missing in the customer experience world, right? Especially over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of doom and gloom about the state of customer experience,
yes.
especially inside that LinkedIn CX bubble.
Mm.
When you get out of that, like you are working with real teams, real companies, does the picture look different? Or what do you think about LinkedIn amplifies that people should, well, take with a little bit of grain of salt?
Yeah. So LinkedIn is have a love and hate relationship with LinkedIn. And I mean, what we read there, like not everything, a lot of things are very over exaggerated, right?
Mhm.
And there was this, I don't know, this trend, or I don't know, it was like a disease that kept spreading, was this desire to declare things had died. NPS has died, surveys have died,
Right,
CX,
right.
journey mapping, dashboards. And it's ridiculous. And I know it's just meant to encourage conversation and debate, and it's supposed to be a bit controversial to poke people's buttons so that they comment and respond and get into the debate, and that's all good. But I think it started to annoy people, I think, because it was just happening all the time. And then you go and you sort of it does get you thinking, right? Are we barking at the wrong tree? Are there things that we really should stop doing entirely? You start asking yourself this question, and then you go out and you go to conferences and you see practitioners, like people, CX managers presenting their programs. You talk to people and you see that no, there is actually, I mean, of course, there are businesses where it's not working and they're dissatisfied and they want to do more. But you also meet a lot of people who are like, yay, we're really happy with what we've just launched and it's working and we've got engagement. And, a lot of sort of programs that sort of people say, this approach belongs in history books. And you see people saying, well, actually, no, for us, we've made it work. And so I think it's on us to look at those examples and say, okay, well, what are they doing differently? If we go back to that Aegon example I gave, is like, okay, what's made that program engaging? What's made that into something that is driving culture? And then they're happy with what they're doing. It's got like buy-in, from the senior management team, like the executive team, and you see these you see these examples of programs where the CEO is on board, so it's not working, so I think it's just, you have to just take it on LinkedIn with a pinch of salt. I think it's important we have debate among ourselves and push for kind of push the thinking forward and let go of things that maybe aren't serving us so well. But I think it's just that the level to which we should completely abandon things versus tweak and move forward. And
yeah. Well, and Frances, I think I want to end there because I think that's what the customer experience world and really the business world in general needs to hear is there may be some things to tweak. There may be some things to leave behind, but customer experience still matters. It's not all doom and gloom. Maybe it has different labels, maybe it has different tools, maybe different techniques, but it's not that we've just abandoned the customer and we don't care about them anymore. And businesses have proven in the real world, like you're saying, that there will be success if we continue to focus on that area in the right way, working on business value. Frances, I've learned a lot today. You saw the epiphany light go off on the top of my head. If folks wanted to have their own epiphany light by learning from you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Oh, probably LinkedIn.
Ironic, right?
But I am on there a lot. So connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a message. Very happy to chat about some of this further with anyone who wants to.
Well, I will get that in the show notes. Click there and you can have that conversation with Frances. Get that started. Frances, it was a delight today. Thank you for being on CX Passport.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been lots of fun.